Welcome to Desperately Seeking the 80s. I am Meg, and this is Travis, who is very kindly filling in for Jessica. So welcome, Travis.
Well, I am so excited to be back, Meg. Although I'm sorry that our beautiful blue-eyed friend is not here with us today. And let me mention that, too. I bet many of your listeners don't realize just how lovely Jess's eyes are. Doesn't she have amazing eyes?
She does, absolutely. And I'm sure she will love to hear that.
Those bright blue eyes with that black hair, it's a plus.
I'm sure that she is sad that she's missing you in person.
Well,
but
I'm saying I'm missing her in person.
Just imagine you're telling all of this to her, and she'll just listen to it in, like a week and a half or something.
Okay, very good.
There you go. So Travis, as I'm sure most of you know, but just to fill in the blanks, Travis was, I'm just going to start from the very beginning.
Go ahead.
In your youth, you were an 84th Street bomber in Yorkville.
Correct, I was.
And then you became an NYPD officer.
I did.
And then you became an author of the Tommy Keene detective series.
Correct, which is what I am now.
And on top of that, since the last time we spoke, you're a podcaster.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. Shame on me. That's right. I am the host of the Another Nobody podcast because I am everybody's favorite nobody.
And you're on YouTube, too.
Yes, we do both. Well, unlike you guys, which I don't understand because you're so much more attractive than I am, why you don't do the YouTube and the audio, but I know it's another thing.
It's another thing. And as you know, every time you add on one more thing, you think, oh, we'll just throw it up. I mean, we are actually on YouTube, but we don't do video.
Oh, interesting. I now will have to pay attention to you on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. We just have audio
Correct.
on YouTube.
With just a logo up.
And an image and a logo.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah, and every once in a while, we have this series called The More We Know, where we just school each other on New York City facts, and that's kind of fun. So we throw those up on video periodically.
Right.
But really, for the most part, we're just hanging tough on the podcast thing.
Yes.
So is it fun, all your new podcasting life?
I enjoy it. I do. I didn't know everybody. I kind of got, I don't want to say pushed into it, but talked into it because everybody kept telling me, Travis, you have to have a presence. I don't have Facebook. I never had an Instagram until recently. I didn't do any social media stuff. Wasn't my thing. I'm a little too old for that, I think, but with the success of the books, they kept saying, you have to have a presence, you have to have a presence. So I started the Instagram. I started coming on podcasts. I think this is going to be my 5th time doing something.
Wow. Yeah.
I would be the number one guest you guys have ever had.
All right. I'm not going to argue.
I don't know. Certainly not in popularity, but in how many times I've been on your show. Because I think this will be the 5th time.
Now, do you remember how we met?
I do not.
This is my memory. You wrote in to the website. And you said, because we were talking about the 84th Street
Correct.
Gang.
I remember now.
And you wrote in and you were like, well, guess what? I'm one of those. And I was also an NYPD officer. And I was like, what? Oh, my God. All these things together. There's so many stories. How do we even begin to scratch the surface? And then we started doing exactly that.
Yep. You were talking about us. So I wanted to set the story straight, so to speak.
Yeah. Also, okay, I think we should dive in because I know we have so much to talk about.
Yeah, and you don't want to eat up all our time just chatting away because, you and I will do that for hours.
Absolutely, no doubt. So, Travis, you know that I always ask Jessica an engagement question.
Yes.
And so for today's story, you were a police officer in the Bronx, correct?
Correct.
Could you just tell me a favorite memory of the Bronx?
Oh, geez, a single favorite memory. Oh, I wish I was prepared. But I'll tell you something. I really do love the Bronx, and I still do. Okay, the Bronx has a bad rap. I consider it to be the forgotten borough that nobody cares about.
That's actually why I was asking.
I really do believe that, okay?
Yeah.
The Bronx is full of, although it is, a very poor, beaten-up area and has had the reputation it has had for decades and decades, it is loaded with really beautiful people, really wonderful people, really hardworking people that many people don't realize just how many people are keeping New York City alive live in the Bronx.
Absolutely. And I've learned so much more about the Bronx just doing these stories and doing research and realizing that a lot of the people who come up in these stories, like, oh my goodness, no, they were in the
Yes.
Bronx.
Well, you know what? I have to immediately backtrack because I'm really going to be in trouble when I get home now. I met my wife in the Bronx.
There you go.
And
Now that's a beautiful memory.
Used to work at a diner called Pete's Donut, and that's where we met. And I started dating her, and that was over 35 years ago.
Perfect.
You know?
That's
and
a wonderful answer.
My favorite thing from the Bronx would be my wife. Okay.
Couldn't get better than that. My sources are the New York Times, Hellgate, which is a website, and Tell Her Story by LaShawn Harris, which was just recently published about this event. On Monday, October 29th, 1984, 67-year-old Eleanor Bumpurs woke up early in her one-bedroom apartment at the Sedgwick houses at 1551 University Avenue and West 174th Street in the Highbridge section of the Bronx.
I know it well.
Her grown daughter Mary was planning to visit her later that day. There was a cool breeze, which was a relief after a very muggy week. I mean, interesting, October 29th, that's not so far off from when this drops.
It's a month away from today.
Right. At 9:30 a.m., a group of 10 to 15 people comprised of, now these are all different groups of people who have all come together, members of the Emergency Services Unit of the NYPD, the City Marshal, New York City Housing Authority workers, EMS technicians, one of Eleanor's neighbors, and a Department of Social Services caseworker stood outside her fourth-floor apartment. They were there to remove her from her apartment for not paying her rent. They discussed, quote, her state of mind, her size, and about the dangers the eviction team faced. So most of these quotes are coming from court documents when they eventually interviewed the participants. She paid $89.45 a month in rent to the housing authority, who provided apartments in the Sedgwick housing development for low-income residents. And they claimed she was 5 months behind on rent. Eleanor told the housing authority, she had been communicating with them over the last few weeks, that she would not pay the rent because she was having problems with her hallway light and stove. In the meantime, Eleanor told her daughter Mary that someone in the building was harassing her, and Mary told her she should keep her door locked. Eleanor told the housing authority on the phone that, quote, people had come through the windows, the walls, and the floors and had ripped her off. On October 12th, so that's a couple weeks before the morning that we're discussing, maintenance workers found no problems with a hallway light or stove. But they did find several cans of human feces in the bathtub. Eleanor claimed these came from, quote, Reagan and his people. On October 25th, so now we're 4 days before the event, a psychiatrist visited Eleanor and diagnosed her as psychotic and recommended hospitalization. A social services supervisor recommended that the best thing to do was evict her first and then hospitalize her. Now, before we get into what happened next, I just want to give a little bit of history on Eleanor. She was born in Franklin County, North Carolina in 1918 and grew up in a working-class family. She moved to New York in the 40s and was the mother of 5. Her children say she loved to dance and cook. She was institutionalized a number of times in the 70s. The famous photo of her in the New York Daily News, which I'm sure, Travis, you're familiar with, and I will definitely post on the Instagram, shows someone who has been through the ringer.
Yes.
Life had taken its toll.
Mm-hmm.
And here she was on a Monday morning with a crowd of people outside her door demanding she let them in. So the authorities had a twofold issue. They had a tenant who was not paying rent, but more to the point, she was not paying rent because of her psychosis. Now, they couldn't hospitalize her against her will without cause. We did a story on when Ed Koch tried to hospitalize Billy Boggs against her will, and that happened 3 years later. So that's like in 1987. And that's a callback to episode 51, Billy's Stay at Bellevue and Andre's Reign at Vogue. We could go into this in depth, but in brief, in the 60s and 70s, a lot of psychiatric institutions had gotten in trouble for mistreating.
Well, and that was the huge deinstitutionalization.
Exactly.
Which was twofold. A lot of them had gotten in trouble for being lousy places, but also the government didn't want to pay for these things anymore.
Exactly.
And sadly, we feel that the ramifications of that today, because there still are no mental institutions available, okay?
Right.
And any New Yorker knows now, you got crazies walking all over the place. It's something that we always had when you and I were children. We had, for lack of a better word, we'll call the bums. Half the bums that walked around were more than just drunks or winos. A lot of them were completely out of their minds and were not being taken care of. And it was, seem to remember, it was in that early to mid 70s type thing where homelessness exploded in New York City. It really did. And we had, in Yorkville and down in the Village where we had an apartment there too, all of a sudden you went from the one or two bums that you knew regularly to literally dozens.
I have that memory too. I can't tell you what year it was, but I definitely remember knowing each one by nickname.
Yes.
And the difference between that and just like when I was in high school, where it was a whole different situation altogether,
Yes.
where there's so many you didn't really keep track so much.
Yes. No, it really is a tragic situation.
Yeah, it is. No doubt.
If we weren't talking about this, I could tell you dozens of stories, but go ahead.
She wouldn't open the door to even have the conversation about her rent. So, it's a bit of a standoff. According to court reports, they announced, quote, "Mrs. Bumpurs, this is the housing authority and police, please open the door." And their plan was this. They did have a plan. The housing authority officials and the city marshal planned to officially evict Eleanor, put her in the ambulance that was waiting outside, and release all her possessions to the moving company, which also had a truck waiting outside. They would take her furniture and clothes and photo albums to a city warehouse. Then their job was over. The hospital would take it from there. When she would inevitably be discharged from the city hospital, there would be no home or possessions to return to.
Correct.
Eleanor was probably unaware of all of these details, but she did know she was scared. The emergency services unit of the NYPD was there to, quote, "preserve peace in the course of the eviction, not to carry out the eviction itself. Eviction is a civil process that is carried out by city marshals."
Correct.
Now, you know more about the ESU, so I'll just say what I learned and then you can fill in.
Absolutely.
The ESU was the highly skilled heavy weapons unit of the NYPD. They were trained to use shotguns, anti-sniper rifles, and submachine guns, and they were called in for riots and hostage situations and suicide attempts. They were equipped with restraining devices such as nets and mace to handle emergency calls that involved, quote, "violently disturbed persons." It was commonly said, when a citizen is in trouble, he calls a cop. When a cop is in trouble, he calls emergency service.
Correct. What I will add, you've done so much research. You always do, Meg. You're so good at this. What I'm going to add to this, though, what people quite often don't understand about ESU as a whole, it is Emergency Services Unit. And these guys are very well trained and they are phenomenal. Everybody thinks that they are SWAT, like the Special Weapons and Tactics. The first thing that you read, that's what everybody likes to think.
They probably look like that.
Well, they are that, but what's combined with that, okay, is, for instance, a young guy wants to go on the job and become ESU because he thinks it's cool. Learn how to be a locksmith. Learn how to be a welder so you can cut doors off their hinges. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
They also do a lot of hostage negotiation, although they're not hostage negotiators. They are the guys that climb the bridges to pull the jumpers off the bridges.
Oh, my God.
To pull the jumpers off the Empire State Building. There was a very good friend of ours who used to own Ryan's Daughter, okay, a pub I know you're familiar with.
Yes.
All right. One of the old owners from there, Mike, was an ESU guy, and he was famous for grabbing one of the jumpers off of the Twin Towers back when the Twin Towers still existed.
Oh, my God.
And they do amazing stuff. And literally when they have a team of guys, each guy can do like 5 or 10 different jobs so that they have all of these different bases covered when they show up.
Right.
They're very, very, very skilled, highly trained guys. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, my understanding too, in addition to that, is that they are there to protect other policemen.
Well, for
backup.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, and an ESU guy too. Like I did many warrants in my time when I was in narcotics and when I was on the SNU team, which is a street narcotics enforcement unit. But if you're not in a particular unit like narcotics who do warrants all the time, you call ESU to serve your warrants.
Because they're special. They have a specialty.
They have the
skill.
specialty. They come in, they take the door, they'll go through with their weapons, make sure it's safe, clear all the rooms, and then the detectives and or police officers will go in for their searches to conduct the warrant. The ESU guys will just make the entry. And then they'll leave. So literally, they'll make the entry, and 5 minutes, they're gone because well,
that answers a question I was about to have.
The A team, or the A truck, I'm not sure if I'm getting it right. It's the A team, which I think works the A truck for ESU, okay? They only do warrants. That's all they do all day. So they might do 5, 6, 8 warrants in a day. Right. Because they just do the entry, and then they'll leave it to you to do the warrant.
And that I didn't quite understand, that when they said, oh, ESU is just here not to do the eviction.
Right.
So I thought eviction meant the entry.
No. So how it would have worked here.
The eviction would mean taking her out, right. But the entry is, in fact, their job.
Correct. So what would have happened here is the marshals would have shown up, or the sheriffs, both do evictions, okay? And they would have shown up. Eleanor would have given them a hard time, all right? And what had happened in this case, okay, is she had threatened them through the door that she was going to throw boiling lye on them. I don't know if you have that in there or not.
Getting there.
But supposedly they had threatened them. So they would have called ESU after the fact. In other words,
ESU isn't there yet.
They will come because they're called.
In a response to it.
Yeah, they're not gonna go to every eviction. And on a side note, just because you mentioned it, I don't want to get off track here, but my Uncle Mark used to work for Liffey Movers. And part of Liffey Movers, who were located up on 86th Street here on the east side, they would do evictions for the city.
Okay.
So my uncle would do many of those evictions for the city.
Get all of her stuff out of the apartment.
Yes. So once the marshals went in and removed you physically from your apartment, okay, either forcibly and or you just say, okay, I'll go now because you're here, okay, they would package up all your stuff, put it in the truck, and then put it in storage for you to come pick up later on.
Right. In the city warehouse is what I read. And what happens to this stuff then? Do you know?
Well, it stays in the warehouse. How long, I couldn't tell you. Right. But I will tell you, and anybody who knows who's ever had their car towed or been evicted, getting anything back from the city is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
And it was for us as police officers, believe it or not, when we would have stuff of evidentiary nature. I mean, it was a nightmare. You'd spend the whole day trying to get your car back.
Right.
You know?
Hopefully it's easier now.
I'm sure it's not.
Okay. So, all right. So, okay, and this is in response to something you just said. The housing authority expected this eviction to be a, quote, messy job, so they'd already called ESU. According to the 1984 NYPD ESU Operational Policies and Tactics Manual, officers should remember, this is a quote from the manual, our relationship with the mentally ill is based on society's desire to help, not to punish. The department recommended to officers, don't be in a hurry, evaluate the situation, keep your own emotions calm and cool, be honest, and avoid force if possible. These suggestions may prove helpful. And from what I read, they didn't have, like, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. This is exactly how you're supposed to go about this. This was just a recommendation, and that the officers should use their best judgment.
Yes, discretion.
Right.
Which is that gray area that lies between black and white. And let me tell you, absolutely everything in the world is gray because nothing is black or white. Also, just to paint a little picture, now the patrol guide is about this thick. People can't see me. It's about 7 inches thick. It's a big, giant book with all the rules. But What the city does, and the police department does again to protect itself, is I'm doing the bunny ears, everybody, quote unquote, call it a guide. Why? Because the second they want to hammer you, okay, they'll take that giant book and bring it down on your head because you didn't follow the guide. However, at the same time, the city will never be held liable for what you may do outside of the guide because it's just a guide.
Exactly. So it's protecting the city. It's not really protecting the officer.
It covers the
at
ass
all.
of the city. Exactly. I want to make that part understood.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry,
for
go ahead.
real. The ESU, when they were called in, had been told by the housing authority that Eleanor was a, quote, an emotionally disturbed person, a knife thrower, and that she had a history of throwing lye. Now, as it turns out, these rumors were never substantiated. She had no record of violence. But the police didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
They just knew why they were called in
and
what the housing authority, there were rumors swirling. The housing police removed her lock. And when they looked through the hole, now I'm thinking, do you think the housing police removed the lock or do you think the ESU removed the lock?
Well, I don't know. Now, ESU most certainly could have, and it would have been in their wheelhouse to do so.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that the housing authority didn't do it because they brought their own locksmith to do it.
Okay.
Because, again, they have people that do everything in the housing department. Another side note, my wife's father, my father-in-law, Neil, was an electrician for the housing authority. There you go.
So, housing police, someone official, removed the lock, and then when they looked through the hole, they saw Eleanor holding a knife, and they could smell fumes, and they feared those were lye. They later determined that the fumes were, in fact, Raid. They called out, "We are the police. Come out. We want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. We don't want to hurt you. Don't force us to come. We'll break your door down. We're coming in." Now, Eleanor's neighbor, Florence, was out in the hallway too, and she called out to her as well. "Mrs. Bumpurs, this is Florence, your neighbor. I live down the hall. Please don't let them disgrace or take away your dignity. Please give them the apartment. Miss Bumpurs, don't do anything irrational. They're talking about taking the lock off the door. They're going to break it down." Eleanor, in response, cursed out everybody and yelled back, "Huh? I don't have any neighbors, and let them take the door down. Housing has enough money to buy another one. If somebody comes through the door, we'll see who gets hurt. Go away. If you don't go away, I'll have something for you. If you come into my house, I'll kill you. Get away from my door. Leave me alone." In response to that, ESU officers entered her apartment. Does it make sense that they would enter because they would then get engaged in this way because she said, "I'll kill you"?
Well, what it comes down to, and I will say yes, with the caveat that this did not happen in seconds and it happened in many, many, many minutes. Could it have been 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour? I'm sure they negotiated for quite some time. Where
it all happened,
the
whole thing from start to finish was half an hour. She died in the hospital half an hour later.
All that really needed to happen for ESU to take charge of the situation is for the marshals and or the housing police, whoever were there, to step back and wipe their hands of it.
Okay.
Fellas, we're not doing it. You have to, we're done now.
Okay.
And that's it. It's their job to now gain entry. And that's what we call it. We call it gaining entry, okay? Right. Which is forcible entry.
And once they gain entry, would it also be their job to remove her?
Well, it would be their job to make sure that everything is safe, okay? So in the event that she's going to fight with them, it's their job to, put her in cuffs.
Restrain her.
It's restrain her.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly, yes. To make sure that the situation is safe and ended. And I would imagine if things hadn't gone the way that they had, all right, they would have either arrested her at the time.
For threatening them? Why would she be arrested?
As far as, again, this comes down to what the marshal wants to do. I have no idea. Okay. So once they gained entry, if everything was cool, they'd probably just verbally force her to sit in the corner in a chair while the marshal did their paperwork, had their stuff signed, and then force the eviction. However, I've never done an eviction, so I don't know exactly how it works. But in the event, again, anything becomes physical, then yes, the police have to end it right there. They have to take charge of the situation, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Officer Elter entered first with a 6-foot restraining bar, and officers Adams and Tedeschi entered next carrying plastic shields. Officer Sullivan held the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. Eleanor was sitting on a stool with an 8-inch butcher knife. They asked her to drop it. She didn't. The officers claim she lunged at them. Officer Sullivan shot her in the hand, blowing off 3 of her fingers, and shot her again, hitting her square in the chest. She crossed her arms over her wound and slumped against the wall. The EMTs came in and tried to assist her, but she fought them off. After finally managing to stabilize her, they removed her from her home. One witness said, this is somebody who was watching her being carried out, quote, "They carried her out of the building with no clothes on. She was naked. They didn't even cover her up. She was naked for everyone to see. She had a big hole in her chest. One of her hands was blown off. They didn't even put her in an ambulance. They put her in the back of a housing authority car." According to an emergency room surgeon, she's now at the hospital, she was barely alive when she got there at 10 a.m. She was, quote, "without spontaneous breathing and a pulse and bleeding profusely. She'd lost well over half of her blood volume. Her right hand was a bloody stump with the thumb and index finger completely missing, and the 4th and 5th fingers were all crumpled over and sort of dangling down by pieces of skin that weren't fully attached to the hand. She died shortly after." There was a huge public outcry in response to the killing of Eleanor Bumpurs. Before we get into that, is there anything else you want to add to like how it all went down?
Well, I know the story.
Yeah,
very
of course
well.
you do, yeah.
And, and you described it pretty much how I remember it happening, except that you did seem to forget they did, I do believe, try to net her.
Oh,
But see,
I didn't read about that.
They attempted to net her, and she was able to either overcome the net, step over the net. These things don't always work all the time, but it's another, they have these like nylon nets that they try to loop over you,
Yeah.
Eleanor Bumpurs, what for listeners may not know, was a very large woman. I've heard that she's
300 pounds.
Well, there you go. I was going to say
5'7".
between 275 and 300 pounds. I don't know. It's a 25-pound difference, but that's a large woman all the way around. And so it's very possible that she was able to get, well, I was surprised. I didn't realize that she had actually fought the EMTs off when they first tried to help her, which is surprising, a little shocking to me, to tell you the truth, because I thought being shot when she was shot in the chest, that was the end of it. But obviously it was not.
No, it was not. So, yes, huge public outcry. She was an elderly, mentally ill Black lady up against heavily armed officers. The Police Benevolent Association took out radio and print ads stating, quote, "This 300-pound woman suddenly charged one of the officers with a 12-inch butcher knife, striking his shield with such force that it bent the tip of the steel blade." The NYPD did develop a mandatory course in the wake of all this to train police officers to work safely and effectively with emotionally disturbed people. Officer Sullivan was acquitted on charges of manslaughter for using excessive force. In March 1990, the city agreed to pay $200,000 to the Bumpurs estate. 2 supervisors at social services were demoted for failing to seek an emergency rent grant for Eleanor and for not getting her proper psychiatric care. Since 1985, members of the NYPD Emergency Service Unit have carried tasers to use instead of firearms when dealing with the mentally ill. I mean, you've filled in a lot of questions that I had about, basically in a situation like this, and I would think that this sort of thing would happen not infrequently, to be honest.
All the time.
So
things like this happen literally every day. People forget, that's another thing people don't realize. New York City is the most populous city in the country. It is a giant, busy, busy city. We have, I do believe, and I could be wrong, but I do believe we have the most housing projects of any city in the nation. And I think we have the most densely populated housing projects because unlike many cities, everything in New York City goes up and down. You understand what I'm saying? High rises.
Yes.
Where in other places
you're more
they
spread out. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So we're dense.
I mean, even our middle income housing, like right around the corner from you here is Thigh-Town. It is a city upon itself.
Right.
In a way, it's a neighborhood upon
true.
itself, just Thigh-Town.
So, if this happens all the time, why do you think this particular event just hit people so hard?
Well, like the same problems that we have today, okay? And everybody's going to think, I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff now. Everybody's think I'm going to be copping out here. I am not, okay?
Copping out.
Sorry. Exactly. I think that the media got a hold of it, okay? And then so I'm going to back it up a little bit and I'll say what happened, everything that happened does not surprise me one bit, okay? And when I say surprise me, things happen. Things go sideways very, very quickly in situations like this, okay? Now, Stephen Sullivan, the officer who pulled the trigger, he's the one that became the devil in this, all right? Stephen Sullivan had 19 years on the job, 14 of which he spent in ESU. He had over 18 different commendations for commendations meaning medals for bravery. Again, like I was saying, pulling jumpers off of buildings, off of bridges, all kinds of really crazy, dangerous things that he's done.
I know that he hadn't ever shot anyone before. He had shot his firearm twice, and both times it was like to a dog attacking, and then there was another event, but again, it wasn't a person.
Another thing that ESU guys do, they're the guys that show up when you have a crazed rabid dog or something like that. Something I've called them for before. When we had scary pit bulls that would be loose in buildings, we call ESU because they have the tranquilizer darts. They have a truck full of stuff, Now, when they entered into this apartment, they had a truck full of stuff. They attempted to net her. They had the shields. She was still resisting. Something that nobody will ever understand, and unless you've been trained and understand this, and look it up on YouTube, you'll find out. If somebody is 20 feet away from you, okay, 20 feet is wider than your apartment. It's 20 feet. If you take somebody 20, it's longer than the sidewalk. It's like 2 sidewalks lengths from the building to the street. Okay. That's about 10 feet. So do that twice, okay? 20 feet away, you should shoot them. That's how quickly they can put that knife to your throat. It sounds insane, but it happens so unbelievably fast. Now, here we have a woman.
Even with the shields, though?
Let me finish, though. Well, we weren't there. We don't know, okay? Now, here he is. He's got his two guys in front of him. He's the one with the weapon. Okay? They tried to net her. Didn't work. She attacked them. Supposedly, true or not, when she struck the steel, she actually bent the knife. Okay? Right. Now, had this been somebody's face, skull, arm, hand, whatever, even an arm injury to your arm, you could bleed out before you get to the hospital. Okay? It is his job to end it. Okay? And that's exactly what he did. And you would say, well, why don't you shoot her in the hand? Why didn't you shoot her here?
Well, they did shoot her in the hand.
You always shoot center mass, which is dead center of the chest, okay? That's where you shoot because why? It's not to kill somebody. It's to stop somebody. If you shoot somebody in the hand, in the leg, in the knee, or whatever, that doesn't mean they're going to stop, all right? If you shoot them always dead center, and you always shoot twice. It's called a double tap. Bang, bang. Okay, to make sure that you're stopping them. And that's what he was doing. Now, back to Stephen Sullivan, just so everybody got their record straight here. Again, 19 years on the job, 14 of them in ESU, all kinds of decorations. He never even had a civilian complaint for cursing at somebody, which I find how anybody can make it 20 years and not get a civilian complaint for something a little bit surprising. So I will say unequivocally, and I know people will be unhappy with me. I do not believe Stephen Sullivan did anything wrong. Now, also understand, unlike the general public, police officers are tried twice. Stephen was tried twice. He went to court twice for this. Once by the city of New York and once by what we call the trial room, which is the NYPD court, where they see if they're going to give you the boot or not.
Right.
Okay? Both times he was exonerated. He was acquitted of all charges and found not only was he acquitted of wrongdoing, let me make this point clear too, he was found of no wrongdoing.
Right.
And that's how it's worded. Go ahead,
I guess
please.
my response is it's less about the individual. It's less about the ESU officers who were there. And it's more about procedure, where it seems to me like de-escalation is just the wise move. And I'm surprised if they are trained in hostage crises, if they can talk somebody off the edge of a building, it does not seem like there was a lot of effort put into de-escalation in this situation. Because to your point, this happened in a really short period of time. This wasn't like a 2-hour standoff.
Well,
This happened very quickly.
We know what we're getting from the media.
Court.
Oh, again,
they were there at 9:30, and she was in the hospital at 10.
Well, I can tell you that everything I've ever been mixed up, I've probably been in the newspaper at least a dozen times. I'm talking media now, but the courts are the same thing. I've been into court hundreds of times, okay? And I have yet, and the dozen times I've been in the paper, it's either been me specifically and or a case that I'm attached to, all right? Never once has it been correct. Sometimes it's a little bit wrong. Sometimes it's like, where'd you guys get this story? Because I was there and none of this happened. So I'm sure there's a lot more that goes onto it than what the New York Times has reported.
Well, I'll just say, I hope they figure out a better way to deal with it than what they did. I can't even imagine that there isn't. And it seems like they have since, to be honest. They did do some things in response to this case that they did give special training after all of this happened, maybe because they were pressured to, or maybe because they realized that actually, this isn't really the best way to deal with people who are emotionally disturbed.
I will again, and I don't want to sound like I'm arguing with you because I'm not. But I'm just
you can argue with me,
showing you the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you could not have had a more seasoned, more trained guy show up.
Then why didn't they de-escalate?
But it's easy to say, but you weren't there. You see what I'm saying? I can't say the same thing. With all of my experiences, I wasn't there. But I have to give credit, okay, to the guys that I know had the experience, had all the toys to work with, okay? And in the end, if somebody's charging you with a knife, I don't care if it's an 8-inch, a 12-inch, a 15-inch, or a 3-inch knife, it doesn't make a difference. You might as well be 10 feet tall. Okay, you have to stop it, and you have to stop it immediately. And that's what you're doing. You're not killing somebody, you're stopping somebody.
Right.
Okay?
And I did read that they had mace they didn't have tasers with them. They did have
tasers were a fairly new thing, which came after this.
Exactly. Yes. And I think possibly, maybe
well,
even in response to this.
So in my time in the police department, throughout the 90s, all right, when they had tasers, the only people who had tasers at that time, you'll see them at every cop's hip now, at that time were the sergeants. You want to know something even crazier than only the sergeants having tasers? They had to keep them in the trunk.
So that's not useful.
Not at all. Because you have to go, number one, I have to call a sergeant to show up. The sergeant shows up to the job, then he has to leave the building to go get the taser and come back.
Right.
You see? But this, again, happens all the time where, for lack of a better word, bureaucrats make the rules, all right?
Right.
When they don't know what they're... Choking. Choking is always a big thing. We see it on the news all the time. Choking. Now police officers are no longer allowed to choke. I was taught to choke in the academy. And I will tell anybody at all, and I'll argue this to the end of the day, anybody that says you can't choke has never had a fight in their life. If you're going to fight somebody, a true fight, you absolutely have to be able to choke them. And police officers today choke people every day because if you're in a true fight for your life, you're going to choke them. Now, as somebody who was trained to choke people, somebody who practiced choking people like in jiu-jitsu class and stuff like that, I have put people to sleep several times intentionally where you choke them out until they're unconscious. I used to do it in the bars and clubs all the time. Okay? It's not illegal in the bars and clubs. It's a fight. But now you've taken that tool away from police officers because of 1,
Michael
2,
Stewart.
10, well, different people who have died. But you also fail to realize that's out of millions of arrests. So it is 0.000 whatever percentage of people that are choked by the police that actually die. But now you've removed that tool, and every time you remove a tool, you up it to the next thing. So if I can't beat you with my hands, now I have to go to a stick.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Would you rather me hit you with my hands or with my stick?
I don't know. Neither.
No, neither. And then, of course, they give you the tasers, okay?
Right.
I personally would prefer a stun gun to a taser because tasers don't work very well or all the time. And
I didn't even know there was a difference.
Do not even like a stun gun is a solid gun. You've seen them zzz, where it goes in between. You know?
Okay.
But anyway, if I shoot you with those tasers, okay, they're easy to rip out, especially if somebody is an EDP, mentally disturbed. They're very easy to tear out, okay? And if they don't land just right, they don't work at all.
Okay.
Okay? And so now you're doing something different than what you should be doing to get it done.
Right.
Mace is another thing. Mace is great when it works.
Well,
it does not always work. It does not always work with crazy people.
Exactly. That's what they said in this case, that they didn't have tasers with them, but they did have mace with them. And people were like, well, why didn't you just mace her? And they said that they felt that it would make her crazier.
And well, also, I can also back that up a little bit too. We're talking about 1984.
Yeah.
The early mace is gone. Everything is way different than it is now.
I bet.
We did not have pepper spray back then. The pepper spray that we have now.
Again, I didn't even know there was a difference between mace and pepper spray.
Much more miserable to get hit with than the old mace, which was just a chemical base. Okay. Which again is different than like CS, what we used to use in the Army, which is CS stands for controlled substance, which sounds like drugs, but it's actually the mace that we use. And that stuff is, you get hit with that, it is amazing. I mean, I've seen, not to be gross, I've seen when we would get gassed on purpose, I've seen snot go from your nose to your foot because your body is rejecting absolutely everything. You know, it's wild stuff. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, actually, a friend of mine just told me the other day she was walking in Times Square. I'm going to say she's 5'3", maybe 95 pounds. And some guy just came and pepper sprayed her right in her face. Geez. And she was just telling me the other day, like the experience of it and miserable. What happened to her. I was just like, oh my God. Just hard.
It is a miserable experience.
Yes.
One more thing with the mace and pepper spray. As a police officer, we would oftentimes not use it when in a confined space. Because if we were in a kitchen, a small, hot project kitchen that we're talking about, I'm macing everybody in the room.
Right, exactly.
You see what I'm saying? People don't think of these things. Now, an experienced guy would know. I mean, I've been to, it used to be a joke that we'd say, you know, the cops are the only ones that get maced. Because once it's let loose, you know, it engulfs the room. And the cops end up suffering more than the bad guy.
Right.
You know?
I'll just say, like, in conclusion, and I really do, I appreciate so much you coming and filling in a lot of the gaps for the story. And obviously your perspective is so valuable. I think the fact that it landed so hard on the city, maybe it's, as you say, it's because, you know, the media talked about it, but it's also because it was a story that felt very close to home to a lot of people who felt disregarded and helpless.
I never knew Eleanor Bumpurs, obviously. At that particular time, I was off in the Army doing Army stuff. But I know Eleanor Bumpurs. I know sad old women who live by themselves. And this is something, before we go on to another segment here, I want to get straight. The true tragedy of Eleanor Bumpurs was not her being shot by Stephen Sullivan. And everybody will say, what are you talking about, Travis? This is what I'm talking about, and this is happening today in every city in America, okay? Eleanor Bumpurs was a completely forgotten woman, okay? She was completely forgotten. They went to evict her. She owed less than $400 in rent, okay?
Ridiculous.
She was a schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Okay? She did have, you didn't mention, she did have an arrest record. She was in trouble with the law before.
I mentioned.
Oh, you did mention that, I'm sorry. Okay? So she had been in trouble with the law before. But here, immediately we'll say, well, the city didn't take care of her. And I don't want to talk ill about the dead or in this case, the dead's relatives, like I'm going to, where was her son and daughter?
Well,
Now, just 2 years prior, okay, to me, just 2 years prior, I was working in a liquor store right over here on First Avenue, okay? And between my minimum wage pay of $2.50 an hour and my tips, I was making like $200 a week. So I could have paid her rent for 2 months.
right.
And here she had a son and a daughter, both grown people, okay, who I know nothing about. I know the daughter went on to be a nurse or something like that. But at
Yeah,
this
she's an
time, she probably
activist.
was a nurse at the time,
Mhm.
okay? But her son, how did nobody help her out with the rent?
I don't know the
How did
answer
nobody take
to
care
that.
of her? How did the again, social services not get her into a hospital or see a doctor or get some medicine?
I'm more inclined to, if we're going to put blame on anybody,
Well,
I'm more inclined actually to the social services because they knew the
I will
full
say,
story
I
and
will
they
say,
understood, and they also had the resources to help her.
yes, like all of these sad, broken old people that walk our city streets every day, okay, they are all completely lost and forgotten about. It wasn't her children. It wasn't the police. The police didn't know who she was until they showed up that day, okay? Wasn't social services or the marshals or Ed Koch, okay? It was all of them. She fell through the cracks every single time, and that's where the true tragedy lies. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do, yeah.
It's because immediately people will blame, you know, one individual. In this particular case, Stephen Sullivan, who ended up retiring early and leaving the job because he couldn't go through the stress. He wanted to retain his pension or whatever, and he had a 3-year court case going through 2 different trials, blah, 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 blah. We can talk about that to nauseum. That was the end result of years and years of neglect. Years of neglect from everybody that stepped in and out of Eleanor Bumpurs' life. And that's where the true tragedy lies.
I mean, the neighborhood that I live in, we're recording right now on 23rd Street. I am very close to the VA.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Bellevue is right around the corner, NYU Medical Center. I would say that there are probably more lost, forgotten people who walk up and down this strip of the city than probably a lot of strips of the city.
Like you just mentioned, go sit in the lobby of the VA hospital.
Right.
I've been there myself. I've been there as a patient at the VA hospital.
I walk by and talk to those.
Sad, sad place.
And it's actually, I will say, let's end on a positive note. Right outside the VA hospital, which I walk my dog by there every morning, there's a tent where some of the vets are selling. I don't even know if they're selling. I think they've just got hats and, just sort of paraphernalia. But really, they're just sitting there and hanging out with each other. And Fozzie, you've met Fozzie.
Yes.
Oh, my God, do they love him?
I'm sure
and
they
Fozzie loves them. And they always, when somebody nice is walking by, they want everybody to stop and hang out. And in that sense, I'm very grateful that I live very close to the VA. But I also, I can see the traffic going in and out of that place. And it is heartbreaking. And
it absolutely is.
I hope that this city figures out something better to do than how they've been handling it.
I don't know. I mean, it's been going on for the last 60 years of my life.
Travis, I so appreciate you having that conversation with me because it's not easy. I mean, we're just talking about facts, but we're also talking about opinions. And, people disagree with me, people disagree with you. And the fact that we can sit across from each other and have a completely reasonable conversation about something that is
absolutely
really hits hard, I think, for all of us.
Meg, that's one of the reasons I love to talk to you and the lovely Jess, who again is absent today. We always say there's always 3 sides to the story. Yours, mine, and in between lies the truth.
Right.
Okay. And what I was actually, I don't want to say excited to have this conversation with you, but I wanted to let your listeners know that the one-sided story, okay, that was portrayed predominantly in the media, and of course by, who was it at the time? Al Sharpton and
Like
you know.
Maddox,
It wasn't
maybe?
Maddox.
Mason and Maddox
It
worked
was with a
closely with
C. I can't
Sharpton.
get his name. It doesn't make it. Let's not
Okay.
waste time on that. But anyways, is to see it from all the different sides because, had you been there yourself and you were the one with the shotgun in your hand, I'm sure you would have a very different outlook on what was happening, or if you were the one that was holding that shield where, she was trying to reach over the top to stab you in the head, you might have been yelling, shoot her, shoot her, because you would have been terrified. You know what I'm saying? There are things that go into it. And if you think that the police aren't scared when they do these things, we absolutely are. In fact, if you are so inclined, I will tell you a story of my own that does not quite mirror this situation, but is very similar. How's
Yes,
that?
please.
You like that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to fast forward it because we're October of 84, right? So let's go to February 28th, 1995.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure I got the date right there. All right. I was a young patrol guy working the 52nd precinct, the 5-2 precinct, as we say in the Bronx. I was sitting in the car with my almost all the time partner, Nikki. All right. And a call came over for a domestic dispute, man assaulting his daughter.
Mm.
And it actually wasn't in our sector. A sector is where you work. But we were sitting on Creston Avenue at St. James Park. And we could look right across the park to Jerome Avenue, it's only a block wide. It's a very small park. And we could see the building that the call was coming on. So my partner, Nikki, said, we'll take that central. In other words, we're to take this job.
Now, let me ask, when you hear that call assaulting, were you given like a number or something, like a code, like it's a code 52 or something like that?
Yes, and you know what? Shame on me, I can't remember.
Okay, I'm just curious,
yes.
like so you get the code and you understood it to be assault, which means
you get
what?
the number, but then you also usually get a description.
Okay.
So it'll be, 10 whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And they'll give you something else, okay? And in this particular case, it was a man who was assaulting one of his children.
And what does that mean specifically to you? Like physically hitting
assaulting
them?
Yes, but we don't know what we're getting ourselves into until we get there.
Yeah.
So 10-4 Central will take the job. And again, it was not our job to take, but we could see the building. So, drove around the corner, get out of the car. I'll walk you through this so I can paint a little picture just so you know what it is, because we're talking cop stuff now.
Yes, please.
What it is to be a policeman, all right? So we get in there, and it's an elevator building, all right? And I believe it was the 3rd or the 4th floor. I can't remember exactly. But we walk in, and we push the button. And this was not a high-rise building. It was like maybe a 6-story, 50, 60 family building, all right? The elevator comes down, but then we take the stairs. We do this so that when we take the elevator up, the bad guy doesn't come running down the stairs, but the elevator is now on the 1st floor with us. It's tactical. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, yes, I do.
And these are the kind of things that cops do when they want to catch the bad guys and when they want to make sure, again, that everybody is safe. That's why we're being called, right?
Right.
So the elevator comes down, and then we turn around and walk up 3-4 flights of stairs anyway, so that, again, we're being tactical. No children, the bad guy, nothing's happening where people are running down the stairs and escaping while we're being lazy taking the elevator. We get there. Immediately, we can hear the screaming from the apartment, okay? The apartment is at the end of a long hallway, and I'm the lead. I go up, and I can hear the screaming through the door, and it's a fairly nicely kept building. It's not a terrible building, all right? Clean hallways, typical steel apartment doors. And I bang on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Police, open up. I back up against the wall because I could hear the screaming. I unlock my weapon. My partner, Nikki, again, is behind me, and we're both up against the wall because there's no way to get to the other side of the door because it's the end of the hallway. All right? We hear more screaming and more screaming, male screaming, female screaming. I bang again really hard on the door. Bang, 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 bang. Police, open up. More screaming goes, and then the door flies open. Bang. And a man named Lito Fuentes, I don't know, probably about 5'10". Turns out he weighed 279 pounds, I believe. Comes out screaming, howling though, like a wild animal, howling, with 2 knives in each hand. Up high, almost like, I don't know if he was trying to put them on his head, like they were horns, or kind of like a picador, the guys that do the bullfighting thing, whatever it was.
Yeah,
he
crazy.
was just nuts, and he comes screaming, running out. Now, here's a situation, just like the Eleanor Bumpurs case, where I should have shot him dead immediately, and or my partner, Nikki, should have shot him dead immediately. We should have, for our own safety.
Yes.
But the way things sometimes happen and why you say things, sometimes get crazy, I was almost too close to shoot him. He was just right on top of me the second he came out the door. I switched my hips on him to try to kind of deflect him and throw him to the ground, okay, which turned out not to be so easy because he was such a big guy. And I struck him in the head, I don't know, 2 or 3 times with my very heavy stainless steel pistol. Okay. I struck him across the head. Now, during this same time, while we're kind of wrestling around, and this is just a matter of seconds, but I mean, so many things are happening within these seconds. He stabs me through my pocket, okay, does not cut me. He does not get it into me with an 8-inch hunting knife.
Oh, my God.
But I'm going to say, luckily for me, what had happened was his hand went inside my pocket with the knife and he was tangled. He couldn't get it back out. And we both fell to the floor.
Now, you are gesturing to like the area right.
My left-hand side,
Your
my left-hand jacket pocket.
Your jacket pocket.
Correct. My police uniform
Got it.
Jacket pocket. His hand literally went inside of my pocket. Just the craziest thing.
Oh, my God.
Okay? We both fall to the floor. I hit him, again, 2 or 3 more times, as hard as I can. So ask me, how hard did you hit him, Travis? As hard as I possibly could, because I am fighting for my life.
Yeah.
Okay?
What is Nikki doing at this point?
Well, Nikki's now helping me. He's actually put his foot on or his hand on. I can't remember what it was. I believe his foot or his knee on the other hand.
On the other hand, with the
knife.
other knife, yeah.
Okay? We get him to be unconscious. We flip him over on his stomach, cuff him up. Okay? As I stand up, the knife falls out from underneath my jacket onto the floor, clackety-clack, and we're like, holy crap. It happened so fast.
It could have easily just gone into your side, into your lungs.
Well, it actually cut my vest. Okay? So it caught my vest, and what people don't know
like your bulletproof
my
vest?
bulletproof vest.
Got it.
Okay? So I could have been and should have been cut, but my vest was in the way. So the jacket helped me and the vest helped me. But also understand, people don't know, a knife can go through a vest.
Mm-hmm.
The way a vest works, the Kevlar actually wraps around the bullet.
Okay.
And holds it. It's just like you're making a fist around your finger. That's what happens to a bullet. A blade, if sharp enough and done properly, can cut right through a vest. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, I was not injured, okay? So now we have him all cuffed up. His wife and daughters come out of the apartment with the neighbors. His wife is hugging me with everything that she has, okay? He's got, I remember, 2 daughters, one who looked to be like a very young teen, 13, 14, and the other one who was maybe 6 or 8 in that neighborhood.
God, that's awesome.
Okay. Then his sister comes up the stairs. Okay. She was the one that called, because what had happened was the wife called the sister at her apartment. Okay. The sister called the police. We showed up and we beat her to the job. Okay. So we're all standing
there. Thank goodness
there.
you got there first, because he probably would have killed his sister.
Well, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Well, what he was doing.
I'm just imagining the guy with the 2 knives.
I don't know what kind of assault was happening to the children, whether it was sexual or just physical or whatever. Turned out he had a long history of drugs. He had a long history of arrest. He was not a good fella, okay? So, let me continue with the story. We're standing there, and Nikki looks down. He tells me, I don't think he's breathing, all right? We're like, oh, shit. We flip him back over. He's not breathing.
Oh, my God.
So we start doing the CPR, all right? And just as we're doing the CPR, we had already called for a bus. A bus is an ambulance. That's cop talk for ambulance, all right? We'd already called for a bus and a supervisor to show up. Both of them, the ambulance shows up with 2 EMTs, and the sergeant and my good friend Jody showed up at the same time. And they're coming off the elevator all together, scoop him up, put him on the stretcher, take him away, all right? And all 4 of them leave. Luckily for us, okay, at that time, and this was a big piece of luck in my opinion, because things can go any different which way, okay? Lito Fuentes was dead. He's gone.
Oh, my God. But why? Why did he stop breathing?
Well, I hit him in the head 4 or 5 times with my pistol. He also had enough drugs inside him to kill a horse. Even though he was the size of a horse at 278 pounds, he was loaded with crack, okay? So he's off to the hospital, okay, to St. Barnabas, I believe he went to. What saved the day for us was the great work of, who was it, Danny Hurahan and Neil Reardon, who were 2 detectives at the time. We were very, very lucky that at that time they were available and came straight over. Had there been a missing child, another homicide, something else to take them away, they would not have come immediately because they would have been busy. They came immediately. They took the entire family and the neighbor to the station house, got statements from everybody. And at that time, because they were so angry, so upset with their father, brother, neighbor, husband, they all wrote very, very damning statements about him and courageous statements about us.
Okay.
Okay? All said and done, Lito Fuentes is dead. He died of what they reported as cocaine psychosis. Crack was a very new thing still back at the time. And we were at the height of the crack epidemic back then. And cocaine psychosis was something that would happen quite often when you were your body was so overloaded with cocaine that it would fry your brain and your heart would explode.
Right.
Okay? That combined with fighting with us, taking the beating that he took.
It's like a heart attack?
Oh, yeah. His heart, they believe his heart exploded. Which I don't know how that works, but that's the way it was described to me. And again, it was not my case. I was not a detective on it, but that's what it was described to me. So again, Neil Reardon, Danny Hurahan, in my opinion, saved the day, okay? Because they had everything on paper immediately. It was only made the papers in the Daily News and on 1010 Wins because nobody liked the story. You see what I'm saying? It was not a juicy story for the media. No activists were involved until like 10 days later when they decided they wanted to get together and sue the city and have a march and do all of these things. But then they realized that the juice was kind of gone from the story, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Number one, it's the Bronx, and nobody cares about the Bronx. All right? Number two, this was a Puerto Rican family, not a black family. So we didn't have the black-white thing, okay? And sadly, even your activist types care less about Puerto Ricans than they do blacks. It's just a crazy, messed up thing, and I'm not trying to be racist or racial. I'm just talking about street stuff here. This is the way the world works. They did not care much about the Lito Fuentes story for whatever reason, all right? Strangely, at the same time, and I wish I could remember their names. I should have looked it up before because I knew I was coming here. There was a case that was on the front page of the paper, which had just gone to trial at that time, where a white cop had shot a black cop on the subway, if you remember that. It was friendly fire thing.
Oh.
And the...
like he was aiming for someone else?
No, the white cop was off duty. The black cop was on duty, but was in plain clothes and came running down the stairs or up the stairs with a gun in his hand.
That's bad.
But there was no shield that was out. Okay. Now, he'd shot him and just put him in the hospital. They hugged and made friends in the hospital.
Okay.
It was, well, okay. And then, of course, he sued the city and got millions of dollars anyway.
Well, I mean...
Well, who wouldn't? The only thing is...
Come on. He got shot for doing his job.
Well, he did, but did the other cop do the wrong thing?
Well, again, I guess
save people. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that it always comes down to some crazy racial incident. Believe me when I say, are there bad apples? Absolutely. But they are so few and far between. And believe me, people aren't going to say, well, geez, I think I'm going to go out and shoot some poor old lady in the projects today or beat some guy to death in a hallway for the fun of it, because it ruins your life too. You see, it ruins your life too.
Yeah,
that guy
absolutely.
on the subway, did not shoot him because he was a black guy. He shot him because he was a man with a gun who was running down the stairs like a crazy person, told him to stop, identified himself, but it happens in seconds. Literally, to snap your fingers, bang, 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 and you have to make that decision. I know a very, very, very nice young man, a Spanish kid whose name is going to escape me now. I'm sorry if you hear this story and I'm forgetting your name, who had a shootout in the Bronx, and although he was victorious in the shootout, one of the bullets that missed the perp hit an innocent person. And he has to live with that for the rest of his life. The rest of his life, he has to know that he shot somebody that was innocent.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing to live with.
Yeah,
terrible.
Absolutely. And I mean, you said that, and I don't know anything about this friendly fire situation that you just talked about, but isn't it a good thing to know that the city and the police force will always think about every single incident like this and dissect everything that happened and try and think about how it could go better, because obviously nobody should get killed, especially for not paying their rent, or for being on the job. That that there's got to be some sort of self-reflection and an improvement. Otherwise,
well, one thing that I would say that is
a nightmare out there.
Just sad about that, and we'll get back to the bureaucracy of it, okay? And I'm not, again, blaming. Well, yeah, I am. I'm pointing the finger and blaming the city and the bureaucracy and the people who quite often come up with the rules. It is the old CYA thing to cover their ass, okay? Back to like the choking thing. They made it illegal to choke people because of the handful of deaths that have happened, okay? But if you've ever been in a real fight in your life, you know you have to do it, It took so long for them to go to automatic weapons. Before then, you had a 6-shot revolver, okay? And you couldn't, because it was insulting to people on the street, it was deemed bad. You couldn't wear like the bullets on your belt like a cowboy did, okay? Or have speed loaders, which is a little cylinder that holds the bullets that you can drop right in. You had to carry 6 extra bullets in a tiny little velvet bag with a string on it that you would carry in your pocket that you have to remove and take the bullets out one by one and drop them in while bad guys are shooting at you. It was insanity. Absolute insanity. And only old cops are going to know what I'm talking about when I talk about that, because it is such a bizarro thing. But they refused for decades to go to automatic weapons. Silly things like, if you remember, you're old enough to remember back in the 70s when cops used to wear leather jackets. Okay.
Just from the movies,
Just
honestly.
from the movies, okay. But that was taken away because people felt they looked too much like the Gestapo, okay?
Oh, interesting.
It was just a look thing. Now, the only people that still have them are the motorcycle cops and the horse cops. They still have leather jackets. But the regular patrol, I mean, in the big picture, who cares? But it's the silliness that they worry about instead of, again, getting Eleanor Bumpurs the care that she truly needs, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely.
I think so often that the old forest through the trees saying?
Not being able to see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And they get it wrong again and again and again. I mean, so much of the in-service training that we would receive over the years, some of it was just completely bizarro, like, are you kidding me with this training? Because it was useless and a waste of time.
All right, Travis. So we have just told 2 harrowing New York City stories. I hope this isn't too personal to ask.
No, please go ahead.
You mentioned just now the police officer who shot somebody by accident, a passerby was shot. Do you carry anything from the man whose heart blew up?
I get asked this quite often when I'm a guest on police type podcasts. Okay. Usually when I talk to you girls, it's New York City stuff.
Right.
I don't think I've ever told police stories on here, as a matter of fact.
No, we just sort of, we tried to keep it in the 80s, and you were a police officer in the 90s, so we haven't talked specifically about.
I believe, and I always say, although my daughter will argue with me because she is a psychologist, all right, that I do not suffer from PTSD.
Okay. That you do not.
That I do not.
But she says you do.
She says I do. All right. But there are things like, my 9/11 story. Okay. I can tell you all about my time at 9/11. And so when 9/11 comes around, when it's on TV, I turn it off.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to see that. I don't think I don't have nightmares. I'm not shattered by it. I'm not depressed by it. I'm certainly not suicidal about it. But there are things. Over the years, I've dabbled a little bit with real estate. And when I'm looking at an beat up old building or house that I'm interested in purchasing, I was looking through a house one time with a friend of mine that we were going to do this house together with, right? And he brought to my attention that every time I opened the door, my hand would raise towards my right hip where my pistol used to be. And he said, I just noticed it, Travis. Every time you open a door, your hand goes to your hip.
That is wild.
Which is just a strange thing.
The body knows.
The body knows because you did it so many thousands of times before.
But I think that's also what PTSD is that your body remembering things that you have no control over intellectually.
Oh, it's possible.
Just
but
vestiges.
For me,
I
when it
would
comes to
be-
the PTSD thing,
Yeah.
I am a very happy-go-lucky guy.
Right.
I am blessed that, in my opinion, I still like to say I keep the heart of a child. I'm a fairly childish, silly person. When I was in the Army, I used to have a first sergeant that this real cranky old black Vietnam vet. He couldn't have been a more stereotypical old beat-up paratrooper, all right? And he would always call me the smiling private. He said, "Look at you, the smiling private, tap dancing down the hallway again," because I was just always in a good mood. When everybody else was trying to be tough, I was having fun. And that's just my personality.
Well, that's also a survival mechanism, right?
Well, that's very possible. It's very possible.
So we usually do a tie-in. What do the two stories have in common? I think it's pretty evident what they have in common, although both are very different stories.
Can we both have a tie-in?
Yeah.
Can we figure out what it is? This is my first time doing a show just with you, so I will say my tie-in, all right? Things are not always what they seem.
Okay.
How's that? Does that work as a tie-in?
Sure.
Is that allowed? Okay,
yeah,
good.
Absolutely. Everything's allowed.
Okay.
And remember, we promised each other that we would do a wrap-up that included information about your podcast, which is, again, what is it?
The Another Nobody podcast.
And your books.
The Tommy Keene Detective Series.
Where do we find you on YouTube?
Yes, I'm on YouTube, which again is For Boston's Media. For Boston's Media is the YouTube channel, but I do believe that is going to be changing soon to the Another Nobody channel. I don't know how that's going to work. Those are for people much smarter than me.
And I'll provide links on the Instagram.
Yes, but you can see all kinds of fun. Yeah, I do some kind of silly things on Back to My Childish Ways.
I know, you do a lot of pop culture.
I do.
It's fun.
Old pop culture.
It's it's highly recommended, and the production value is top notch.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
Very impressive.
Because believe me, it has nothing to do with me. I'm surrounded with good people. All right. My lovely bride is one of my producers.
No way.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh, she is phenomenal. Except that she's so mean to me, making me do it over. Do it over. No, I don't think that's going to work, Travis.
I had no idea you'd roped her into all this. That is amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
It's a family affair.
It is. And she's a good girl.
Thank you so much, Travis. This has been wonderful.
No, well, thanks for having me. I love coming to visit you guys.